November 2nd, 1718. I feel as though I am composed enough now to write about the events of the last couple of days. They are truly fantastic, and if anyone is to read this journal in the future, they would not believe they occurred at all. I know I would not had I not been present for them, with every sense leaving a memory until my last day on this earth. When I woke up, the rain had stopped, and it was night. The clouds had begun to clear, and the glow of the moon lit my surroundings. I decided to make for the ship. As I made my way back from memory, the clouds began to roll back in. The moon went away, and I was lost in darkness. Then my feet began to feel some sand, and then some more. Then a bolt of lightning illuminated Splintery Wake. I made for the ship, and on my way up to the gangplank, I knew something was wrong. There were no lights on board anywhere. I could not hear the crew. As I was wondering where everyone was, the storm began again. I ran to my quarters to wait it out. There was no one below deck. The lightning began to get closer to the ship, and then the fantastic began. A bolt of lightning hit the anchor cable, burning it away, and the wind began to pick up with awesome severity. The ship began to move on its own. I ran on deck just in time to see the shore slipping away. Then a bolt of lightning struck the beach right in front of my eyes, and I fled below deck. If this were the whole of my tale, it would not be so strange. It is what happened after these events. I still cannot comprehend. When I got below deck, it was so quiet. There was no light except for the occasional flash, which lit the crew deck through the portholes. I headed for the captain's cabin. My reasoning was I could watch the clock there, and maybe the captain would be there. Maybe. He wasn't, and the clock had run down from the constant lurching of the ship. I sat in the dark silence, occasionally lit by lightning from the windows behind me. At some point, I must have drifted off.
Your name?
Peter Weeks, sir.
Mr. Weeks, were you involved in the incident on the night of October 29th, 1718?
I am unsure, sir. Could you specify?
Please do not waste your time, Mr. Weeks. You involved, were you not? I remind you, you are under oath.
I was involved in the incident.
Describe your involvement.
It made so much sense at the time, sirs.
I woke up with a start. I looked immediately at the door. Through the crack, I could see a glow. It was not the glow of candlelight or even fire. This glow was a bluish green. "Ahoy!" I said, and the glow began to recede. I knew it was in motion, but it took me a few minutes to get up the nerve to go after it. I got to the door and paused for a moment. Then I opened it. The glow had just rounded the corner. The bluish-green light grew dimmer and dimmer as it moved away. I followed it. I emerged on the crew deck just in time to see the glow disappearing up the steps. "Ahoy!" I said again. This time it seemed to pause, but it was already on deck, and it quickly continued on its way. I started on after the glow was gone completely. Then I took a breath and went up the stairs. The night had become pitch black. The storm seemed to have stopped again, but the wind had picked up greatly. From what I could make out, the ship was lurching starboard to larboard and back again. Also, at some point, the mizzenmast had come undone, so the ship was being awkwardly propelled onward. I scanned the deck for the glow, then I saw it at the bow. I approached it with caution. It was obscured behind one of the masts, and as I peeked around it, I got my first glimpse of the glow. It was not a glow at all. It was an outline, a full outline of a man. "Eep!" I squeaked, but I was just loud enough the spectre turned, but I was gone long before he had a chance to see me. But not before I heard him say,
Amelia!
I ran all the way to the lowest deck where I could hide among the stores. I sat there in the dark for what seemed like an eternity. It was terrifying, but actually comfortable. It was dark, but safe. It felt as though I was home again as a child, playing a game of hide-and-seek with Mother. How I wanted to be home again. I let the pleasant memories come to me, to take me away from my current situation. Then I saw the glow again. It was faint at the top of the stairs at first, but it grew in intensity, brighter and brighter, and I knew I had to find a more adequate spot to hide, and eventually make my way back up the stairs. There was a large stack of barrels secured in the middle of the room. I just snuck behind them when the room became illuminated in the bluish green. I peeked through the chinks in the stack. The spectre was looking for me. I watched him, I followed his every movement, and when I knew I had the chance, I took it. His back was turned to me, and I ran the other way, up the stairs and up into the gunner's cabin. I slammed the door to the lowest deck down, just as the Spectre was approaching the stairs. I looked around, and found a metal priming rod to secure the door with. I slid the back through the loop, and wedged the rest between two barrels in the corner of the room. Then I fled. Behind me, I heard a crash. I was already in Plato's cabin, and at that point, I closed the door as quietly as I could.
Your name?
Thomas Duncan, sir. Mr. Duncan, were you involved in the incident on the night of October 29th, 1718?
Sir, I will answer you truthfully. Only if I know my family will be provided for.
Your family is not the concern of the Admiralty, Mr. Duncan. Answer the question truthfully.
Mr. Duncan, your family will be fine. You are not on trial here. We are trying to get to the truth.
Very well, sirs. We were standing guard when Master Dorn approached.
I didn't know how long I had been out for, but when I woke back up, the glow was emanating from below the door. There were 2 doors in Plato's cabin, though. One across from the captain's cabin, and one to the second hallway. I crawled over to the other door and opened it as quietly as I could. I tiptoed into the hallway. It was only 2 feet, but it felt like 12 yards. As I crept, I saw the glow. The Spectre was staying where it was, but the light was so bright it rounded the corner. I made for Jane's cabin, but it was locked. I tried Thomas's cabin, and I was just closing the door when the glow began to brighten. I knew I had little time. I looked around, and then saw the porthole and remembered.
Amelia, you want to see something funny?
What?
Come here. It's Seamus's watch, right?
Yes.
Alright, so we're right below the quarterdeck. I'm going to sneak out this window and scare the soul out of him. Watch me.
Careful, Thomas.
Shh, you'll ruin everything.
I made for the porthole of their cabin and balanced myself on the trim of the ship. The rigging was just to my right. I edged my way over, flipped, and nearly fell. I grabbed onto the lowest rung for dear life as the water chopped beneath me. I pulled myself up to the second rung, and the glow began to emanate from the cabin. I pulled myself up to the second rung, the third, and so on. I reached the quarterdeck, then I heard,
Amelia! Wait!
I ran. I slipped on the stairs to the half-deck. I had no time to lick my wounds. I scrambled up and made for the mizzenmast. Then I thought better and made for the foremast. As I suspected, the Spectre was emerging as I was partway up. He bounded to the quarterdeck, which bought me more time. By the time I was at the top sail, he had been frozen, looking over the side of the ship I had come up on. I wondered for a moment. This did not seem malicious. It seemed sad. Then the Spectre shook himself and continued searching. By this point, I was crossing the rigging to the crow's nest. He had not spotted me, and would not spot me. I watched the glowing ghost run the length of the deck and back, not once, not twice, not even 3 times, but 7. Then I began to lose count. He was desperately searching. For me. He went below again, and my eyes began to droop once more. I was exhausted, and I just wanted to sleep. I fell into a deep sleep.
Your name?
Michael John, sir.
Mr. Dorn, were you involved in the incident on the night of October 29th, 1718?
I was, sir. And had you been there, you would have been too. Explain yourself, Mr. Dorn. Otherwise, this tribunal will find you guilty of insubordination.
Kensington. Continue, Mr. Dorn.
Sirs, had you heard and seen what I had seen among the rest of us, I feel my actions were justified. Do I regret them now? Yes, sirs. I regret every moment, and I will for the rest of my life. Regret is not justice, Mr. Dorn.
Kensington, enough. Allow the man to speak. Continue, Mr. Dorn. There will be no further interruptions.
Aye, sir. It was after we buried Johnson.
I briefly woke up. I peeked over the crow's nest. The Spectre was at the helm of the ship. With a raise of his hand, the sails flew down, and the ship traveled faster and faster. He steered the ship and only looked ahead. He was determined to get wherever he was bound for. I tried to get a better glimpse, and then his head moved upward. He saw me. I ducked back, but the game was up. I returned to sleep, knowing I would find out our destination when I woke up, or was woken up.
Goodbye, Amelia.
Amelia! Amelia, wake up, please! What? How did I... Thank God! Thank God!
Don't you ever scare me like that again, Miss Gale.
Not now, Sam. Are you all right, kid?
I think so.
How are you feeling?
Should we tell her now, son?
No.
Tell me what? Don't worry about it now. Just rest for a long time. I've been resting. I want to know what I've missed.
Amelia, a body washed up on shore while we were looking for you.
This the 5th year of our good King George's reign, God save him. The Admiralty has sequestered a tribunal to determine the cause of an incident which resulted in the death of Captain Nathaniel Gray and the loss of the body of the same. Those who stand accused are the following: crewmen Michael Dorn, Thomas Duncan, and Peter Weeks. Officers Commander Jacob Steele. This tribunal shall commence.